Aisha had always been known as the kindest soul in her small town. She grew up helping others, smiling at everyone, and dreaming of the day she would wear her wedding dress and walk down the aisle with flowers in her hands. Her laughter once filled her house, and her parents would often say that even the walls smiled when Aisha did. She was engaged to Imran, a well-settled young man whose family was respected in the community. Their marriage had been planned for months, and Aisha had already started collecting little things for her new home. Curtains she liked, kitchen dishes in her favorite color, and a simple gold frame where she planned to keep their wedding photo. Everything seemed perfect, until one rainy evening changed her life forever. It was a dark night when the accident happened. Aisha and her parents were returning home from the market when their car skidded on the wet road. She remembered the loud crash, the sound of glass breaking, and then nothing but pain and silence. When she opened her eyes, she was in a hospital bed. Her legs felt heavy, her body weak. She tried to move but couldn't. The doctor looked at her with sad eyes and told her something she could not believe. Her spine had been injured, and she would never walk again. The words echoed in her head like thunder. Never walk again. For days she cried silently, hoping it was a nightmare she would wake up from. When she finally went home in a wheelchair, everything felt different. The house that once felt warm now felt cold and quiet. Neighbors came to visit her, but most of them came only out of curiosity. They whispered in corners, pitying her fate. Some said it was God's test. Others said it was bad luck. Aisha tried to stay strong, but every word pierced her heart. What hurt her most was not the pain in her legs, but the silence from Imran. He had promised to stand by her, yet after the accident, he stopped calling. Days turned into weeks, and she began to realize what was coming. One afternoon, Imran's parents came to visit. Aisha's mother welcomed them with tea, trying to hide her worry. But their faces were cold, their voices distant. Imran's mother said softly, "We are sorry, but our son is too young to handle this kind of responsibility. You understand, don't you?" Aisha's hands trembled as she held her teacup. Her father tried to argue, saying love should not disappear because of hardship. But Imran's father only sighed and said, "We wish her the best, but this marriage cannot happen." Those words broke her completely. They left, and with them all her dreams walked out the door. That night Aisha sat alone by the window, staring at the stars she used to wish upon. The wedding dress she once adored now hung lifeless in her cupboard. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She remembered how Imran used to tell her that he loved her smile. Now she wondered if he would even recognize her anymore. Her mother tried to comfort her, saying that time heals all wounds, but Aisha only whispered, "Some wounds never heal, Ami." As days passed, people began to forget about her, but not their whispers. Whenever her parents took her out in her wheelchair, she could hear them, those hushed voices saying, "Such a beautiful girl, what a pity," or "Who will marry her now?" Every word felt like another chain locking her away from the world. Aisha began to stay inside most of the time. She painted, read books, and tried to smile for her parents' sake, but deep down she felt like a shadow of her old self. Her laughter was gone, her eyes no longer shined with hope. Sometimes, when the evening breeze blew through her window, she would close her eyes and imagine herself walking again, down the same road, wearing a white dress holding flowers, people smiling as she passed. But when she opened her eyes, all she saw were her still legs and her silent wheelchair. She tried to pray, asking God for strength, but even her faith felt weak now. Her life had turned into long, quiet days and sleepless nights, filled with memories of what could have been. One morning, as she watched children playing outside her window, she saw her reflection in the glass, pale, fragile, and tired. She whispered to herself, "Maybe this is my life now." But somewhere deep inside her, a small voice answered, "No, not yet." She didn't know what that meant, but it gave her a strange kind of peace. Maybe destiny was not finished with her story. Maybe her life still had meaning beyond what she could see. That evening, her father came into her room and said softly, "Aisha, life is not over. It's only changed." She looked at him and forced a small smile. "I know, Abba," she said, though she didn't believe it. But those words stayed in her heart like a seed waiting for rain. Days turned into weeks, and Aisha slowly began to adapt. She learned to move her wheelchair on her own, to cook while sitting, to do small things without asking for help. It wasn't easy, but every little victory made her stronger. Her parents began to see glimpses of the old Aisha again, the one who smiled even when life was unfair. Still, whenever someone mentioned marriage, her heart would ache. She told herself she didn't need love anymore, that she would focus only on living peacefully. But deep inside, a quiet longing remained, the hope that someone, somewhere, might look beyond her wheelchair and see her soul. People continued to talk. Some said she should go live in the city where no one knew her. Others pitied her and spoke as if her life had ended. But what no one knew was that destiny had already started moving in silence. Somewhere far from her little town, another person's story was about to cross paths with hers. Someone whose arrival would change everything she thought she knew about love, courage and fate. And while Aisha sat by her window that night, staring at the moon with tears in her eyes, she had no idea that her life's second chapter was about to begin, one that would prove that broken wings can still find a way to fly. Days slowly passed, turning into weeks, and Aisha's world stayed mostly the same. Quiet mornings, long afternoons and lonely nights. She had learned to hide her pain behind a soft smile, but deep inside the emptiness never went away. Sometimes she would roll her wheelchair to the front porch and watch people pass by. Children ran to school, couples walked hand in hand, and families laughed together. She would smile at them, though her heart quietly whispered that life is no longer mine. One afternoon, her mother encouraged her to attend a charity event being held at the local community hall. It was for people living with disabilities, and doctors, volunteers, and families were coming to share support and stories. Aisha didn't want to go at first. She didn't like being around crowds anymore, especially where pity-filled eyes followed her. But her father insisted, saying, "You might meet new people, Beta. It will be good for your heart." So she agreed. The hall was bright and filled with soft music. People moved around, some in wheelchairs, some with walking sticks, yet all wearing brave smiles. Aisha looked around quietly, feeling shy. That's when a little girl ran past her, giggling. The girl's laughter was full of joy, like sunlight breaking through clouds. She stopped near Aisha and waved. "Hello, Auntie," she said cheerfully. Aisha couldn't help but smile back. "Hello, sweetheart. What's your name?" The girl grinned and replied, "Lena." A man hurried behind her, slightly out of breath. He looked about 35, kind eyes, simple clothes, and a tired but warm smile. "Lena, slow down. You'll bump into someone," he said gently. Then he turned to Aisha and nodded politely. "I'm sorry. She gets too excited sometimes." Aisha smiled softly. "It's okay. She's lovely." He smiled back. "Thank you." "I'm Omar." That small meeting felt ordinary, yet something about it stayed in Aisha's mind long after the event ended. Omar had spoken to her like she was just another person, not someone to pity. He didn't look uncomfortable around her wheelchair. His words were simple, but his eyes carried kindness she hadn't seen in a long time. A few days later, Aisha saw them again. She was visiting the park with her parents when Lena spotted her and ran over, waving happily. "Auntie Aisha, you came." Aisha laughed for the first time in weeks. "Yes, I did." Omar followed soon after, carrying a small bag of snacks. He greeted her parents politely and sat on the nearby bench while Lena showed Aisha her drawings. The little girl's joy was contagious. Her laughter made even Aisha's mother smile. Over time, they started meeting more often, sometimes by chance, sometimes by plan. Omar would bring Lena to visit Aisha, and soon they became like family friends. He told Aisha that his wife had passed away when Lena was just 2 years old. Since then, he had been both mother and father to his daughter. Life hadn't been easy, but he never complained. He said softly one day, "I've learned that life doesn't stop when something breaks. You just have to learn how to walk again. Maybe not with your legs, but with your heart." Those words touched Aisha deeply. Omar was different. He didn't ask about her accident or look at her with sadness. He asked about her hobbies instead, what books she liked, what music she listened to, what dreams she still had. When she laughed, he listened as if it was the most important sound in the world. Slowly, Aisha began to feel alive again. She started dressing up a little more, brushing her hair neatly and even humming songs while waiting for their visits. But not everyone saw it the same way. Neighbors began whispering again, They said, "Look at her trying to impress a widower." Others said, "He only feels sorry for her." The same voices that once pitied her now judged her. Aisha tried to ignore them, but their words stung. One evening, while Omar and Lena were visiting, a woman from the neighborhood walked past and smirked. "How lucky, Aisha. You found someone to take care of you again," she said sarcastically. Omar heard it too, and his eyes filled with anger, but Aisha just smiled weakly, pretending it didn't hurt. After they left, Aisha went to her room and cried silently. She told herself she was foolish to believe someone like Omar could ever see her differently. He had a daughter, a life, responsibilities. Why would he want someone broken like her? The next day, when Omar called, she didn't answer. He sent a message asking if she was okay, but she left it unread. For the first time in months, her house felt empty again. Omar visited a few days later, standing at her door with flowers and Lena beside him. Her mother answered and said politely, "Aisha is resting." In truth, Aisha was sitting in her room, listening quietly. She could hear Omar's gentle voice saying, "Please tell her I just wanted to check if she's all right." Lena added softly, "Auntie Aisha doesn't like me anymore." Tears rolled down Aisha's cheeks, but she stayed silent. After they left, she felt as if she had lost something precious. Not love, but hope. That night, her mother came into her room and said, "Beta, that man and his daughter, they care about you. Don't let people's words steal your happiness again." But Aisha just shook her head. "Ami, people like us don't get happy endings," she whispered. Her mother sighed, kissed her forehead and turned off the light. Outside, the rain began to fall soft and steady. Aisha sat by the window, watching droplets race down the glass. She remembered the way Omar smiled when Lena laughed, the way he talked about life like it was still beautiful despite everything. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "Maybe in another world, Omar, maybe in another life. But destiny doesn't listen to what we whisper. It listens to what our hearts truly need." And while Aisha believed their story had ended, fate was already preparing something that would bring them together again, in a way neither of them could have imagined. A few weeks passed since Aisha stopped talking to Omar, but his absence felt heavier with each day. The house had grown quiet again, and even her mother noticed how Aisha's smile had disappeared. She would sit by the same window where she once waited for Lena's laughter, now staring blankly at the street. Sometimes she heard the little girl's voice echoing in her memory. "Auntie Aisha, you came," and her heart ached. She wanted to forget, but the warmth Omar and Lena had brought into her lonely life refused to fade. One morning, while Aisha was watering her small indoor plants, she heard a knock on the door. Her mother opened it, and there stood Omar holding a box of sweets. "Assalamu alaikum, Auntie," he greeted softly. "It's Lena's birthday today. She really wanted to invite Aisha." Aisha froze in her chair, unsure whether to speak or hide. Her mother looked at her and said gently, "Go, Beta. You should go for her sake." Aisha hesitated, but when she saw Lena's smiling face peeking from behind Omar's legs, her heart melted. "Okay," she said quietly. At the small birthday gathering, children ran around with balloons and laughter filled the air. Lena was full of excitement, showing everyone her pink cake. Omar helped her cut it and made sure every child got a piece. When he brought a slice to Aisha, she smiled faintly. "You didn't have to invite me," she said softly. Omar looked at her for a moment and replied, "You're part of our lives now, Aisha. We didn't want to celebrate without you." His words were simple, but they struck deep. She realized he truly meant it. As the party ended and everyone left, Aisha stayed back to help clean up. Omar told her not to bother, but she insisted, laughing that she could at least wipe the table while sitting. They talked as they worked, about little things, funny childhood memories and their favorite foods. Aisha found herself laughing freely again, and for the first time in a long while, she forgot she was in a wheelchair. Omar noticed the light in her eyes return, and it made him smile quietly to himself. From that day onward, they began meeting more often. Sometimes Omar would visit with Lena after work, bringing homemade food or small gifts like books and flowers. Other times, Aisha's mother would invite them for tea. The house, once filled with silence, now had laughter again. Lena adored Aisha and would sit beside her drawing pictures or asking endless questions. "Auntie, when I grow up, can I be kind like you?" she'd ask, and Aisha would smile and say, "You already are, my dear." Omar watched them together and felt something stir in his heart. Aisha had brought warmth into his life, the kind he hadn't felt since his wife passed away. She didn't just make him smile. She reminded him that love still existed even after pain. He admired how she never complained about her condition, how she faced every day with quiet courage. She made him believe in goodness again. One evening, as the sun painted the sky orange, Omar and Aisha sat in the garden while Lena chased butterflies nearby. The air was calm and the sound of birds filled the silence. Omar glanced at Aisha and said, "You know, I used to think strength meant never falling. But after meeting you, I realized real strength is standing up after life breaks you, even if you have to sit to do it." Aisha looked at him, surprised, her heart beating faster. "I don't feel strong," she whispered. "I just survive," Omar smiled softly. "Then you're stronger than most of us." Her eyes glistened, but she looked away. She didn't want to believe his words. She was afraid of feeling something she had buried deep inside. The world had already hurt her once. She didn't want to open that door again, but her heart was beginning to disobey her mind. Their bond grew with every visit. They shared meals, laughter, and stories of loss and hope. Lena would often draw pictures of all three of them together, a little girl, a man, and a woman in a wheelchair, all smiling. One day she ran to Aisha and said proudly, "Look, Auntie, this is our family." Aisha laughed awkwardly, her cheeks turning pink while Omar smiled shyly. But inside, that picture touched both of them more than they admitted. Soon neighbors began to notice. They watched Omar visit often and started talking again. "He just feels sorry for her," one woman whispered. "He'll leave once he finds someone healthy," said another. The gossip spread quickly, like it always does in small towns. Aisha heard their words one day when she went to buy cloth from the market. Two women looked at her and said loudly, "She's using sympathy to catch that widower." Her heart sank and tears welled in her eyes. She turned her wheelchair and left silently. That evening Omar came to visit as usual, but Aisha wasn't herself. She smiled faintly, spoke little, and avoided eye contact. He noticed and asked gently, "Did I do something wrong?" She shook her head. "No, Omar, you've done enough. You should focus on your life, on Lena." He frowned, confused. "Aisha, what's wrong?" She finally looked at him, eyes full of pain. "People are talking. They think you're only here because you pity me." Omar leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "Let them talk. They don't know us," Aisha smiled sadly. "They don't have to know us, Omar. Words hurt, even when they come from strangers." He tried to speak again, but she interrupted softly. "Maybe it's better if you stop visiting. For Lena's sake, too. I don't want her to hear such things." Her voice broke at the end, but she held her tears. Omar sat in silence for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "If that's what you want," he said quietly. Lena, who had been playing nearby, looked up in confusion. "Are we not coming here again, Papa?" Omar forced a smile. "It's not for a while, sweetheart." He stood, thanked Aisha's mother for the tea, and left with Lena holding his hand. When the door closed, Aisha's heart felt like it was breaking all over again. She wanted to run after them, to say she didn't mean it, but her voice failed. That night she cried until her pillow was wet. She had pushed away the only people who made her feel alive again. But in her mind she told herself it was for the best. She thought she was protecting them from gossip. She didn't know that sometimes protecting others means breaking yourself. As she sat alone by the window, the street outside quiet and empty, she whispered to herself, "It's better this way." But somewhere deep inside, a small part of her still hoped that maybe, just maybe, this was not the end of their story. Days passed, and the distance between Aisha and Omar grew wider, though both of them felt its weight in their hearts. Aisha spent most of her time in silence again, the kind of silence that fills the air after laughter has gone. She tried to convince herself she had done the right thing, that it was better to end things before people's words caused more pain. But every evening, when the sun dipped low and shadows filled her room, she found herself thinking of Lena's laughter and Omar's gentle smile. She missed the warmth they brought, the feeling of being seen, not pitied. Omar, on the other hand, struggled to explain to his daughter why they no longer visited Auntie Aisha. Lena would ask every day after school, "Papa, can we go see her now?" He would smile weakly and say, "She's busy, my love. Maybe another day." But Lena was clever. She looked at him one evening and said softly, "Papa, when you lie, your eyes look sad." Omar didn't reply. He simply hugged her tightly and whispered, "Sometimes grown-ups have to stay away from people they care about." The nights were long for both of them. Omar would sit on his porch after putting Lena to bed, staring at the stars. He remembered how Aisha's eyes shined when she laughed, how strong she was even in pain. He wanted to go to her, to tell her that people's opinions didn't matter, that what he felt was real. But he also knew Aisha's heart was fragile. She had already been broken once by love. If he pushed too hard, she might never trust again. So he waited, silently hoping she would reach out first. Then one evening a storm rolled through the town. Heavy rain poured down. Lightning flashed across the sky and the wind howled through the streets. Aisha sat by her window watching the storm, her mind lost in thought. The rain reminded her of the night of her accident. The same sound, the same helpless feeling. But tonight something felt different. Her heart was uneasy, as if warning her that something was wrong. A sudden knock came at the door. Her father opened it to find one of their neighbors, soaked from the rain, breathing heavily. "Did you hear?" The woman said urgently. "There's a fire in Omar's neighborhood. It started in one of the old houses, spreading fast." Aisha froze. "Omar," she whispered. "Is he okay?" The woman shook her head. "I don't know, but they're trying to save people." Without thinking, Aisha turned to her parents. "Abba, please take me there." Her father hesitated. "Beta, it's dangerous. Please, Abba." She interrupted, her voice trembling. "I need to know they're safe." Seeing the fear in her eyes, her father nodded and quickly grabbed an umbrella. Together they rushed out into the rain. The roads were muddy, the wind strong, but Aisha didn't care. Her heart pounded as they approached Omar's street. Smoke filled the air and the glow of fire lit up the night sky. People were shouting, running with buckets of water. Aisha's eyes scanned the crowd desperately. Then she saw him, Omar, carrying Lena in his arms, coughing from the smoke but safe. Relief flooded her chest so fast it made her dizzy. Her father pushed her closer, and when Omar saw her, he froze. Their eyes met across the chaos, his full of surprise, hers full of tears. "Aisha!" he shouted over the noise, walking toward her, still holding Lena tightly. The little girl's face lit up when she saw her. "Auntie Aisha!" she cried. Omar stopped in front of her, soaked and tired. His clothes were burned in places, his hands covered in soot. "What are you doing here?" he asked, half angry, half relieved. "You shouldn't be out in this weather." Aisha's voice trembled. "I heard there was a fire. I was scared something happened to you." For a moment neither of them spoke. The rain poured down around them, washing away the ashes and smoke. Then Aisha's father said softly, "Thank God you're both safe." Omar nodded, holding Lena closer. "We lost everything," he said quietly, looking back at the house that was now mostly burnt. "But we're alive. That's all that matters." Aisha looked at him, the same man who had once walked into her life like a quiet breeze, and now stood in front of her like strength itself. Her heart broke seeing the pain in his eyes. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his arm. "You can stay with us," she said softly. Omar hesitated. "No, Aisha, I can't do that. People will talk even more." She shook her head. "Let them talk. You and Lena need a place to rest. That's all that matters now." Her father nodded in agreement. "She's right, Omar. You and your daughter will come home with us tonight." Omar looked down at Aisha, her face wet from rain and tears, and something inside him gave way. For the first time, he didn't care what people said. He nodded slowly. "Thank you." They walked back together through the rain, Aisha in her wheelchair, Omar pushing it gently while carrying Lena on his other arm. The storm still raged around them, but inside Aisha's heart a strange calm had settled. For the first time in years, she didn't feel weak. She felt needed. When they reached home, Aisha's mother helped Lena dry off and gave her warm soup. Omar sat quietly, staring at the floor, still in shock. Aisha wheeled over and said softly, "You've done enough for everyone else. Omar, now let someone take care of you." He looked up at her, and their eyes met again, this time not with guilt or confusion, but with unspoken understanding. That night, as the rain finally began to fade, Aisha lay awake, listening to the soft breathing of Lena sleeping in the next room. She thought about how quickly everything could change, how one night could bring two lives together again. Somewhere deep inside, she felt something shift. Maybe this wasn't just an accident. Maybe fate had chosen this storm to bring them back to each other. And as she closed her eyes, a small, hopeful smile appeared on her face. For the first time in a long time, her heart whispered not in sorrow but in faith. He came back. For a few days, Aisha felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Happiness. Arman and Sarah filled her home with laughter, respect and kindness. Aisha found herself waiting for their knock on the door each evening. When they left, she often caught herself smiling for no reason. Her heart, once filled with pain, was slowly learning to hope again. She began to imagine a future where she wasn't just a burden sitting in a wheelchair. She imagined a future where she could be a wife, a mother, part of a family. But every time such thoughts came, she quickly pushed them away. He is only helping out of kindness, she reminded herself. Men like Arman don't fall in love with girls like me. Still, her heart refused to listen to her fears. Arman was changing too. At first, he helped out of sympathy. Then it turned into friendship. And without realizing it, friendship turned into something stronger. He found peace in Aisha's company. When she talked, he felt understood. When she smiled, he felt alive. She became the voice that calmed his worries and the presence that healed his loneliness. Sarah, innocent and pure, adored Aisha. She held her hand as if it belonged there. To her, Aisha was perfect, someone who cared, listened, and loved her without conditions. Slowly, a small family had begun to form, without any of them saying it out loud. But while love was blooming quietly, trouble was growing loudly. The town people noticed the bond between them. Instead of happiness, they spread poison. Women in the neighborhood whispered, "She is trapping a good man." Men said no one wanted her, now she is looking for another victim. Some even laughed cruelly. A disabled girl and a single father. What a joke! Aisha pretended not to hear, but every word hit her like a knife. She was trying to rebuild her life, yet the world pushed her down again and again. Her aunt warned her too. "Aisha, be careful. People are talking. They think you are dreaming too high." One evening, as Arman walked Aisha to the garden, they suddenly heard loud voices. Two women stood outside the gate, shouting loudly so the whole street could hear. "Aisha, stop using your wheelchair drama." One of them mocked. "You are trying to catch a man with a child so he will feel pity for you." The other added, "You will never be a real wife. Who wants a paralyzed bride?" Aisha froze. Her chest tightened. She wanted to hide, disappear, run away, but she couldn't run anymore. Her eyes filled with tears she fought to hold back. Arman stepped forward, furious. "Enough," he shouted. "Do not speak about her like that." His voice was strong and shaken with anger, but the damage was already done. Aisha looked at his face and full of protection, and fear rose inside her. Not fear of him, but fear of becoming a weight on his life. She stared at her own useless legs and felt small, broken. What future could she give him? What if people mocked Sarah because of her? What if Arman regretted choosing her someday? The voices of the women kept echoing in her mind. She turned her face away and whispered shakily, "Maybe they are right." Arman looked at her in shock. "Aisha, don't listen to them. You are stronger than all of them." But she couldn't believe him. She felt like a burden he would eventually regret. That night, after Arman and Sarah left, Aisha cried silently. She looked at her wheelchair with hatred, wishing she could stand, walk, run, be normal, be accepted. She prayed for her pain to disappear. She wished she could erase that accident from her life. For the first time since Arman entered her world, she wanted to push him away, not because she didn't care, but because she cared too much. She didn't want to be the reason he and his daughter suffered again. Meanwhile, Arman sat on his bed, restless. He thought about how cruel the world could be to someone so pure. He wanted to protect her from every hurt, every insult. He wanted to hold her hand and promise she would never be alone again. But he didn't know how to say those words. He feared she might not accept him. Two hearts were longing for each other, both scared to speak the truth. Destiny had brought them together, but fear was now trying to pull them apart. The storm had begun, and neither of them knew how much stronger it would become. Before their love could finally shine, the next morning the town buzzed with gossip. What happened outside Aisha's gate had spread like wildfire. People were cruel. They twisted the story, turning kindness into scandal. "Did you hear?" one woman whispered in the marketplace. "The single father is planning to marry that paralyzed girl." Another replied with a laugh. How desperate must he be? Every word burned like fire when Aisha heard it. She stopped going outside. She refused to see anyone, even Arman and Sarah. Whenever they came, she would ask her mother to tell them she wasn't feeling well. Arman tried again and again, leaving flowers at her door, but she never came out. He understood what was happening. The town's poison had reached her heart again. The same poison that once destroyed her confidence, her dreams, her smile. He couldn't watch it happen a second time. He knew he had to do something bold, something that would silence everyone once and for all. So he made a decision, one that would change everything. That evening, Arman walked through the market holding Sarah's hand. The crowd stared. He didn't care. He went straight to Aisha's house. Her father opened the door, surprised to see him. "Arman, is everything all right?" he asked. Arman nodded, his eyes firm and calm. "Uncle, I need to speak to Aisha, please." Her father hesitated, then nodded slowly. He could see the seriousness in Arman's eyes. Aisha was in the living room, sitting quietly near the window, staring at the fading sunlight. When she saw him walk in, she froze. "Arman, what are you doing here?" she asked softly. He took a deep breath and walked closer. "I've come to tell you something, and I want everyone to hear it." Her parents exchanged a confused glance. Arman turned to them, his voice steady. "Uncle, Auntie, I want to ask for Aisha's hand in marriage." The room went silent. Even the ticking clock seemed to stop. Aisha's eyes widened in shock. "What?" she whispered. "Arman, please don't joke like this." "I'm not joking," he said, kneeling down beside her wheelchair. "You've taught me what real strength is, Aisha. You've shown me what love means, not with words, but with your heart. You made my daughter smile again. You healed wounds no one else could see. I don't care what the world says. I just know one thing. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Tears welled in Aisha's eyes. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak. "Arman, people will talk. They'll call you a fool for marrying someone like me." He smiled gently. "Then let them. I'd rather be a fool who loves truly than a coward who listens to lies." Her parents were speechless. Tears glimmered in her mother's eyes. "Arman, do you understand what you're saying?" her father asked. "This won't be easy. People won't accept it, I know," Arman said firmly. "But I'm not marrying people. I'm marrying her." Sarah, who had been quietly holding her father's hand, suddenly spoke up. "Papa, does that mean Miss Aisha will be my mama now?" Aisha looked at the little girl, her heart breaking and healing all at once. Sarah smiled innocently, running to her side. "Please say yes, Miss Aisha. I prayed for a mama who smiles like you." That was the moment Aisha's strength melted. Her tears finally fell and she whispered shakily, "Yes, yes, I will." The next day the whole town exploded with talk. Some were shocked, some angry, some secretly happy, but no one could ignore it. Posters of wedding preparations appeared and invitations went out. People gathered outside her house whispering, "She really said yes? He's lost his mind. How long will it last?" Aisha heard it all, but this time she didn't break. She had faced pain before. Now she was ready to face the world. On the wedding day she wore a soft white dress, simple yet elegant. Her father rolled her wheelchair down the small garden aisle they had made at home. Flowers decorated the walls. Candles flickered in the evening breeze. Arman stood waiting at the end, dressed in a clean white kurta, his eyes full of pride. As she approached, every whisper in the crowd faded. For once, people weren't looking at a paralyzed woman. They were looking at courage, love, and grace. When Arman took her hand and said, "I do," the entire town went silent. Even the ones who doubted them couldn't deny something pure. Something divine was happening before their eyes. Aisha smiled through her tears. After years of pain and rejection, she finally felt chosen. Not out of pity, not out of charity, but out of love. The world had once rejected her for what she couldn't do, but today the world witnessed what she could. She could love. She could heal. She could be someone's forever. And as the evening light touched her face, Aisha realized sometimes broken people are the ones who know how to love the deepest. But even as they exchanged vows, one face in the crowd watched quietly. Someone who wasn't happy about this union. someone who was about to test their love in a way neither of them expected. The real battle hadn't even begun. Days turned into weeks after the wedding. Aisha and Arman finally began to live a life filled with quiet joy. Their home was small, but their hearts were full. Every morning, Aisha would help Sarah get ready for school, combing her hair while telling her stories. Arman would smile as he watched them, often thinking how complete his life had become. For the first time, Aisha felt free, not from her wheelchair, but from her pain. She laughed again, cooked again, dreamed again. Sometimes she would sit by the window, feeling the sunlight on her face, whispering prayers of gratitude. But happiness has a strange way of being tested. One afternoon, as Arman returned from work, a man stopped him on the road. It was Rafiq, the same man who had once been Aisha's fiancé. His eyes were cold, filled with bitterness and jealousy. "So you really married her?" Rafiq sneered. "You married the woman I left behind. Do you know what people say about you now? They laugh at you, Arman. They call you weak." Arman's fists clenched, but he didn't respond. "Walk away, Rafiq," he said calmly. Rafiq smirked. "You can pretend to be noble, but deep down you'll get tired. Taking care of a crippled woman forever? You'll regret it one day, just like I did." Arman's eyes turned sharp. He stepped closer and said in a firm, steady voice, "The only regret in your life is losing her. You walked away from gold because you only saw the dust." Then he walked off, leaving Rafiq speechless in the middle of the road. That night, Aisha noticed Arman was quieter than usual. When she asked, he smiled and said, "Nothing, just a long day." But inside his heart burned. He hated that anyone would insult her. He promised himself he would never let Aisha feel small again. The next day, as fate would have it, Aisha overheard two women outside the shop saying cruel things again. "He'll leave her soon," one said. "Men like him can't live with such burden forever." The other nodded. Maybe he married her for sympathy, not love. Those words cut deep. For a moment, old fears returned. The same fear that had haunted her since the accident. Was she truly enough for him? Would he really never regret marrying her? She didn't want to doubt Arman, but her heart trembled. That evening, when Arman came home, she was quiet. "Aisha, are you okay?" he asked. She looked away, blinking back tears. "Arman, be honest. Did I ruin your life?" He was stunned. "What? No. How could you even think that?" "People keep saying you'll regret marrying me," she whispered. "Sometimes I believe them. Maybe I stopped you from having a normal life." Arman knelt beside her, gently lifting her chin so she could see his eyes. "Aisha," he said softly, "before you, my life was only routine and work, food, sleep. But you gave me something real. You taught me how to live again. You think I see your wheelchair when I look at you?" He smiled sadly. "I only see the woman who fixed a broken man." Tears rolled down Aisha's cheeks. Arman took her hand and placed it on his heart. "This beats because of you," he said. "If anyone says I made a mistake marrying you, then they've never known what true love feels like." Sarah, who had been standing quietly at the door, ran in and hugged both of them tightly. "Papa, Mama, please don't cry. You're both my favorite people in the whole world." Her small arms wrapped around them like a promise, innocent and unbreakable. From that day, Aisha stopped caring what people said. She learned to live proudly in her truth. Together, she and Arman opened a small foundation for people with disabilities, helping them find work, confidence, and dignity. Slowly, the same people who once mocked her began to respect her. They saw her strength, her kindness, her unshakable heart. Even Rafiq, who once laughed at her, came one day to the foundation, not with pride, but with shame.